Have you ever bumped into someone who seems completely ordinary on the outside, only to realize later that they hold a past deep within them capable of altering the very fabric of your existence? Picture yourself standing as one of the wealthiest and most powerful women across America, firmly believing that billions of dollars can fix any crisis, heal any wound, and solve every problem life throws your way. Yet, your entire world turns upside down when you discover that the only person who can finally thaw your chronically silent daughter's frozen heart is a quiet, unassuming single dad sitting completely alone in a cozy corner of a small neighborhood cafe. What unfolded next left every single person in that room utterly speechless. For years, a parade of high-priced doctors, specialized therapists, and renowned medical experts had tried everything in their professional toolkits to help a sweet little girl who had abruptly stopped speaking after enduring a devastating, heartbreaking tragedy. Then, in the span of just one lazy afternoon, she leaned over and whispered 5 simple, magical words to a total stranger. Those fragile, unexpected words did not just rewrite her mother's life overnight. They gently unlocked a profound story of hidden courage, quiet selflessness, and genuine human kindness that no one could have ever anticipated. Emma Lawson was a titan of industry, a household name recognized across the entire nation as the brilliant billionaire CEO who had built one of the most successful and groundbreaking technology empires in the country. The morning newspapers regularly hailed her as fearless and visionary. Business magazines published glowing profiles praising her razor-sharp leadership, and top-tier investors constantly admired her unwavering confidence in the boardroom. But the moment she stepped through her front door at the end of a grueling workday, none of those glittering titles, awards, or accolades meant a single thing. Inside those walls, she was simply a heartbroken mother fighting a quiet, desperate battle to hear the sweet voice of her 6-year-old daughter once again. Little Lily had completely retreated into a shell of silence after losing her devoted father in a catastrophic, tragic accident 3 full years prior. Ever since that black day, she might offer an occasional tiny smile or give a slow nod when absolutely necessary, but she refused to utter a single sound. Medical specialists diagnosed her with selective mutism, a deep psychological defense mechanism triggered by severe trauma. Emma poured millions of dollars into her search for a cure, flying in the best specialists money could buy, but nothing worked. Then, on a crisp Saturday afternoon, Emma decided to take Lily away from the sterile, mansion-sized emptiness and into a small, sunlit waterfront cafe tucked away just outside the bustling city limits. She desperately hoped that the gentle lapping of the water and a peaceful change of scenery might finally lift her daughter's heavy spirits. The cafe was blissfully quiet, bathed in warm, afternoon light. Sitting near the large glass window was a man dressed in a faded, worn gray cotton shirt, deeply engrossed in a colorful children's adventure book. Resting right beside him on the wooden bench was a small, practical backpack decorated with various travel and outdoor patches sewn neatly onto the canvas. He looked completely ordinary, the kind of guy you would pass on the street without a second glance. His name was Daniel Carter. While most people in the neighborhood simply took him for a hard-working construction laborer, almost nobody knew the heavy truth that he had once served with distinction as an elite Navy SEAL on dangerous overseas deployments. Even fewer people knew the private burden he carried, raising his 8-year-old son entirely on his own after losing his beloved wife to a long, grueling battle with cancer. Daniel eventually noticed little Lily staring intently at the vibrant drawings and sketches filling the pages of his book. Instead of looking away or acting uncomfortable, his face softened into a warm, inviting smile. "Would you like to come over and see the pictures?" he asked in a voice as gentle as a summer breeze. Emma instinctively stepped in, offering an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry. She doesn't talk." Daniel didn't flinch or look pitying. He simply nodded with a quiet grace. "That's completely okay," he replied softly. "Sometimes people have very important reasons to keep quiet for a while." There was zero pity in his tone, only a deep, profound understanding that seemed to wrap around the table like a warm blanket. Without expecting anything in return, he gently slid the illustrated book across the polished wooden surface toward the little girl. Lily hesitated for a brief second, then slowly reached out her small fingers and opened the cover. For the next several minutes, while Lily stared down with growing curiosity, Daniel quietly picked up a paper napkin and began sketching tiny, whimsical cartoon sea turtles with a ballpoint pen. He didn't bombard her with awkward questions, nor did he try to force a conversation out of politeness. He simply shared the quiet space and let her breathe. And then the impossible happened. Lily reached her tiny hand out, gently touching the edge of one of the fresh drawings. She lifted her chin and looked directly into Daniel's steady, kind eyes. In a voice so delicate and quiet it was barely a breath, she asked the question that shattered time itself. "Does it hurt remembering?" Emma froze completely. The ceramic coffee cup slipped straight from her trembling fingers, crashing onto the table and spilling dark liquid everywhere. For the first 3 years since the tragedy, her daughter had finally spoken. Hot tears instantly welled up and flooded Emma's eyes, blurring the room into a watercolor painting. Yet, Daniel remained completely calm, his expression anchored in deep empathy. He looked at the little girl and answered with absolute honesty. "Sometimes it does hurt, yes, but the people we love so much would always want us to hold on to the happy, beautiful moments way more than the painful ones." Lily smiled. It wasn't just a polite curve of the lips. It was the brightest, most radiant smile Emma had laid eyes on since the day her husband passed away. Over the succeeding weeks, Emma and Lily made it a ritual to return to that exact same waterfront café every single Saturday afternoon. True to form, Daniel was almost always there sitting at the window table alongside his bright, energetic son, Noah. While the two children happily spent their time coloring pictures and sharing crayons, the two parents engaged in long, unhurried conversations that flowed as naturally as the tide. As the weeks melted into months, Emma slowly unraveled the remarkable layers of Daniel's life. He had spent years putting his life on the line during perilous overseas missions, carrying burdens most civilians could never fathom. Yet, upon leaving the military, he deliberately chose a humble, peaceful life whose sole mission was raising Noah right. To Daniel, all the money in the world could never compare to the priceless value of simply being present, sitting across the table, and watching your child grow up. He never once bragged about military medals, never boasted about past heroics, and never sought the spotlight. Instead, he constantly talked about the quiet power of everyday kindness. He firmly believed that the strongest, most resilient people on earth were those who reached out to help others without ever keeping score or expecting a round of applause. Emma found herself learning profound lessons about leadership, humility, and humanity from this simple construction worker, lessons that far surpassed anything she had ever encountered from the high-powered corporate executives in her business circle. One stormy afternoon, a sudden torrential downpour lashed against the cafe windows, trapping everyone inside. Amidst the howling wind and driving rain, an elderly man pushed open the door, completely soaking wet, shivering, and struggling to keep his arms wrapped around a heavy bag of groceries. Without a second of hesitation, Daniel stood up from his seat. He strode over, smoothly took the heavy bags from the man's trembling hands, guided him gently to a warm, dry table, and quietly walked up to the counter to buy him a hot lunch, paying for it entirely out of pocket without making a grand show of it. The elderly man enjoyed his warm meal, completely unaware of who had quietly covered the bill. Emma watched the entire scene unfold from her booth, her heart swelling with admiration. She walked over and asked softly, "You do things like this all the time, don't you?" Daniel offered a humble, self-effacing shrug and a warm smile. "My mother always taught me that kindness only truly counts when nobody is keeping score." Those simple words sank deep into Emma's soul, echoing in her mind long after they left the cafe. Just a few weeks later, fate dealt Daniel a harsh blow when he received an unexpected phone call delivering devastating news. The local construction company where he had worked loyally for years was abruptly shutting its doors down, leaving every single employee out of work overnight. Instead of flying into a rage, cursing his bad luck, or complaining about the unfairness of the world, Daniel calmly thanked his manager for the opportunity and spent the entire afternoon sitting down with his distressed co-workers, helping them update their resumes and coaching them on job interviews. When Emma heard the news, she was utterly astounded. She tracked him down and shook her head in disbelief. "Your own livelihood just vanished. Yet you're spending all your energy worrying about everyone else before yourself?" Daniel just flashed that signature, easygoing grin. "They have families to feed and bills to pay, too. They're worried sick." That evening, Emma sat alone in her expansive office, utterly unable to get Daniel out of her head. The contrast between cutthroat corporate boardrooms and this man's pure, selfless heart was staggering. The very next morning, she extended an invitation for Daniel to visit her corporate headquarters downtown. When he arrived, looking slightly out of place wearing his single, neatly pressed suit, he hesitated at the massive glass entrance. "I'm not looking for charity, Emma," he admitted candidly. Emma smiled warmly, her eyes sparkling with absolute certainty. "I'm not offering charity, Daniel. I'm offering a partnership and an opportunity." When Daniel stepped through the double doors into the grand executive boardroom, dozens of senior corporate managers and vice presidents were already seated, waiting in tense anticipation. Many of them assumed he was just another high-net-worth investor or a VIP client. Emma walked to the front of the room, looked around at her leadership team, and spoke with profound reverence. "Everyone, this is the man who recently reminded my little daughter how to find her voice again." Instant, pin-drop silence fell across the massive room. "More importantly," Emma continued, her voice steady and proud, "he has reminded me what true leadership actually looks like." Right there in front of her stunned executives, Emma offered Daniel the high-profile position of Director of Community Outreach, a newly minted leadership role tasked with spearheading nationwide philanthropic programs supporting military families, struggling single parents, and children navigating the heavy grief of loss. Daniel stared at her in absolute shock, his jaw slightly slack. "Emma, I don't even have a business degree. I swing hammers and build walls." Emma stepped closer and replied with a gentle, reassuring smile. "You possess something infinitely more valuable than any university diploma, Daniel. You truly understand the human heart." Months rolled by, and the internal culture of Emma's multi-billion-dollar technology empire began to undergo a breathtaking transformation. Employees stopped treating work as a mere 9-to-5 grind and started volunteering together in droves. Generous educational scholarships were established for underprivileged kids. Veterans returning from active duty were fast-tracked into meaningful, high-paying tech careers, and single parents were granted the flexible, humane work schedules they desperately needed. State-of-the-art medical technology was quietly shipped to children's hospitals nationwide. At the heart of every single new initiative, project, and corporate policy was one simple, grounding question that Daniel routinely asked at the start of every meeting. "Who needs a little kindness today?" That simple sentence spread like wildfire through the company ranks. Before long, competing businesses and corporate giants caught wind of the initiative and began copying the model. What started as a tiny, accidental act of compassion inside a quiet, rainy waterfront café had unexpectedly blossomed into a movement touching thousands of lives across the entire country. Then came Lily's 7th birthday. Family, close friends, and colleagues gathered to celebrate the milestone. As the afternoon sun poured through the windows, little Lily walked gracefully up to the front of the room, standing bravely before a small microphone. The entire crowd held their breath in nervous anticipation, wondering if the young girl who had locked her world away for years would actually speak to a crowd. Lily scanned the room until her eyes locked onto Daniel standing in the back with Noah. She offered a radiant, confident smile. Then, her clear, sweet voice rang out across the silent room, carrying effortlessly through the air. My daddy is up in heaven watching over me, but God sent me another hero right here on earth to remind me that true love never really leaves us. There wasn't a single dry eye left in the room. Tears streamed freely down cheeks as Daniel pulled Noah into a tight, emotional hug, while Emma rushed forward to embrace her daughter with every ounce of love she possessed. In that magical, suspended moment of time, absolutely nobody cared about billion-dollar corporate valuations, prestigious business awards, or fancy executive titles. The only thing that mattered was one man's quiet, unassuming decision to show a tiny ounce of genuine kindness to a sad, silent little girl he had never met before in his life. Kindness possesses a mystical, transcendent way of reaching deep into the darkest, coldest corners of the human soul. Places that cold cash, raw power, and relentless success can never hope to touch. A gentle, unhurried word, a patient, listening heart, or a simple, uncalculated act of everyday compassion has the power to reshape someone's entire existence in ways we can never fully measure or understand. So, wherever you happen to find yourself today, make the intentional choice to spread a little kindness. Offer a warm smile to a complete stranger walking down the street. Send an encouraging text to someone who feels utterly alone in the world. And never, ever underestimate the staggering ripple effect of genuine care. Because the smallest, most insignificant act of kindness you do today just might become the greatest, most life-altering miracle in someone else's story tomorrow, and perhaps quite beautifully in your own as well.